Night murmurs from the far border. Seaboard had been keeping watch in the hunting lodge for 2 days and 2 nights. The fresh snow that fell that morning covered the forest, making the night exceptionally quiet. Even he, a seasoned hunter, couldn't shake the drowsiness. But the memory of that girl in the village with her throat cut open, blood gushing relentlessly. That scoundrel must pay the price. This thought made Seaboard pull himself together. The dense forest seemed like a black veil woven from nightmares. At this moment, he heard a faint rustling sound from the southeast. A massive, dark shadow was approaching rapidly. In a blink of an eye, it was upon him. Seaboard gripped his crossbow tightly. There was poor visibility from his vantage point, as a fallen pine tree blocked his view of the dark, shadowy figure. Through gaps in the pine needles, he could make out its foreclaws. Those claws were as large as his head, and the beast's coarse, jet-black fur resembled thorns sprouting from the night itself. Suddenly, the monster stopped. Had it seen me? Seaboard's muscles tensed, ready for battle. Unexpectedly, the beast before him turned away abruptly. Whoosh! Instinctively, he fired an arrow from his crossbow, striking the creature squarely in the right shoulder. Wincing in pain, the monster plunged headlong into the forest without looking back. Seaboard didn't want to hit a vital spot, of course, but at such a close range, the wound must have been significant. Seaboard followed the trail of blood. The crimson trail vanished before a magnificent estate deep within the dense forest. It was almost as if the mansion within the estate was cut from an old oil painting and then transposed into the gloomy sea of trees. Its soaring spires pierced the treetops, faint white light seeped through the window panes, watching the visitors with cold, vigilant eyes. This is way too strange, no? Someone who lives in a house like this choosing to stay in such a remote area? Seaboard rang the doorbell of the ancient mansion with suspicion. An elderly, well-dressed butler answered the door. Aside from the slightly pallid complexion, he appeared to be human for certain. When Seaboard inquired about the wounded beast, the old butler shook his head blankly, claiming to have never seen it. The hunter explained that the trail of blood had led him here, suggesting that the monster might be hiding within the estate. Unless the monster was found, everyone would be in danger. After a moment's thought, the old butler brought the hunter to the master of the house, a young man in his early 20s, strikingly handsome. His thick, jet-black hair cascaded to his waist, fine and graceful. He listened quietly to their account, before nodding and saying, "You really trudged all the way here through the snow. A true hunter never lets go of prey that has already fallen into their grasp, it seems." To thank the hunter for his help, the master of the estate extended a warm invitation for the hunter to join him for dinner. A blizzard had begun raging outside, after all. Regardless of whether the hunter wanted to protect those within the manor or to hunt down the monster, he ought to take lodging there for the night. Black hair. Seaboard felt a twinge of suspicion. He had grown up in the Frostmoon Scion's encampment and had once heard the old priestess say that, among the Fae, the Varkolak were the trickiest things to deal with. They had 2 hearts and could transform into 2 entirely distinct forms, human and Fae. Yet no matter which form they took on, their fur remained the same color. The wolf-like monster's fur was the exact same color as this young nobleman's hair. Seaboard hesitated briefly before accepting the invitation. Throughout the meal, he tried to get a read on the other man in all sorts of ways, whether by adding pepper and garlic, flavors wolves detested, to the food, or by displaying the amulet he wore, which shimmered in the moonlight. Nothing seemed to cause his host any displeasure. The young man ate the food elegantly and even took Seaboard's amulet in his hands, examining it closely. After the sumptuous meal, he even entertained Seaboard by playing a melodious song on the organ. Of course, the hunter did not let down his guard. Naturally, he had no inclination to listen. At long last, bedtime arrived. The young master rose to take his leave. Suddenly, he turned back to the hunter. With a meaningful look, he said, "There is no moonlight tonight, and a snowstorm rages outside. Please do not leave your quarters in any circumstances. We can investigate that monster together first thing in the morning." Of course you'd say that, Seaboard thought to himself. He remained in his quarters until it was quiet outside, then ventured out carefully in the darkness. Sulking through the night was, after all, precisely a hunter's forte. There was something very wrong about this estate. He examined several servants deep in slumber. All of them had strange scars on their limbs, neither deep nor shallow. They were not fatal, but it did not look as if they had injured themselves while working. Recalling the old butler's pallid complexion, Seaboard grew increasingly alarmed. He heard tales of the Varkolak having a particular fondness for tasting fresh human blood. What sent another chill down his spine was the organ, which was actually made from bone. Moreover, as an experienced hunter, he did not seem as if the bones were from an ordinary wild beast or common livestock. Just as he was about to take a closer look, he heard the barely audible sound of footsteps coming from the room at the end of the corridor, running lightly towards the main gates. Zebor slipped into the shadows and followed. Through the snowstorm outside, he could vaguely make out a figure ahead. It was the young master of the house. The hunter pressed on, step by step through the snowstorm. The two men arrived at a clearing in the dense forest, one after the other. Suddenly, the young man stopped. Zebor peered out from behind a tree. Amid the swirling snow, the dark-haired youth slowly stripped off every last garment he wore. There, on his right shoulder, a fresh, unhealed arrow wound. Suddenly, all the snow besides the young man, both the snow in the sky and on the ground, hung suspended in mid-air, revealing the frostlamp flowers on the forest floor, previously buried by the snow. The shimmering light on the flowers like blood streamed ceaselessly towards the young man. Whether it was an illusion or not, the wound on his shoulder seemed to begin healing gradually. It was the Varkolak. Zebor hesitated no more. A sneak attack was hardly honorable, but he was a human trying to kill a fae, and he had no choice. Pulling out his dagger, he sprang from his hiding place, stabbing at the young man. Who would have thought that the young man would suddenly turn around and seize his wrist, almost plunging the blade into his chest? They fell to the ground, wrestling as the blade flashed at their fingertips. Their breaths and roars mingled in a chaotic tangle as neither would yield. In the struggle, Zebor's strength gradually waned. Impossible. There was no way the slender young man could best him with sheer strength alone. Monster! You monster! Sensing that tides had turned, the hunter let out a desperate, hopeless scream. No! I'm not a monster! The hint of hesitation flashed through the young man's eyes. Now's his chance. Zebor snatched the dagger back, burying it in his opponent's heart. Blood splattered through the falling snow as the young man's eyes slowly dimmed. Before the hunter could catch his breath, thick black fur began sprouting eerily from the body that should have been dead. The young man was rapidly transforming into the form of that enormous wolf-like monster. Shocked, Zebor tried to pull out his dagger in an attempt to deliver more blows, but a massive claw pressed upon the blade's hilt, pinning it deep within its chest. The monster roared with laughter, the cruel sound ringing through the snowstorm. Staring at the hunter, it growled hoarsely yet excitedly. We Varkolak are born with two hearts. Blood gushed from the open wound, but the monster's eye burned ever brighter. Thank you for piercing through that extraneous heart for me. Now I'm finally complete. Scarcely had the words been spoken when the monster opened its maw, its fangs gleaming cruelty. With a cruel snap of its jaw, it lunged for the hunter's neck. The tale abruptly ends here. Who can say for certain whether this is a legend or an undiscovered truth? Perhaps the fae known as the Varkolak really possess two hearts. They are now nearly extinct, and many have dismissed them as absurd myths. However, rumor has it that the Duchess, Lady Evlampia Orlova Snezhnaya, is actually a Varkolak, albeit not one covered in wolf fur. Verifying this legend would be simple enough, but dear reader, you likely lack the courage to question that exalted lady herself.